Andrew Kalajzich is enjoying his first few hours of freedom in a long time today. The former Sydney hotelier has just been released from jail after serving 25 years for arranging the murder of his wife Megan. Kalajzich is thought to have spent millions of dollars appealing against his conviction. Reporter Carl Herr was at Silverwater jail in Sydney for the release and he joins us now. So Carl, what was it like when he stepped out a free man?
Well, Ros, Andrew Kalajzich, now 71 years old, walked out of a building here at Silverwater Prison late this morning. He walked out of a building accompanied by two probation and parole officers and walked calmly to a vehicle that was awaiting for his release. Now, there was a large media presence here waiting for his release. He didn't answer any of the questions that were put to him fairly briefly. It was all over in a matter of seconds. Essentially, he stepped into the car. It was driven off the prison complex, bound for the home of a family member where Andrew Kalajzich will have to reside.
And Carl, this was a huge case that was spread all over the headlines back in the 80s. Just remind us of the story.
Indeed, Ros, this was the sort of story that regularly gained front page headlines back in the 1980s in particular. This was a man, Andrew Kalajzich, who was said to be well connected both in business and political terms. He was charged over the murder, arranging the murder of his wife, Megan, who was sleeping in their Fairlight home at the time that she was murdered. She was shot in the head. Now, when he was eventually convicted, Andrew Kalajzich made a series of attempts to clear his name. It included appeals to the Court of Criminal Appeal, a series of challenges that eventually were completely exhausted, but he eventually earned the right to a judicial review of the case. But in 1995, that concluded somewhat definitively that there was no doubt that he was guilty of the murder.
And Carl, he is on parole. What will his life be like now, briefly?
Well, Ros, as I mentioned, he is headed to the home of a family member. He will have to reside at that address for now. He has had some taste of freedom over the past few months in the sense of weekend release. That is just so that he can adjust in some way to some presence of being on the outside. But now he won't have to return to prison. He will be subject to a number of parole conditions, though, over the next 3 years. Things like not associating with certain individuals. He will have to report to his probation and parole officers. He'll be restricted from travelling overseas without prior consent, and he'll also have to be subject to psychological counselling if that is deemed necessary.
Carl, thank you.